Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon everyone. My name is EMAD ALHADERI and in this presentation I will be elaborating on my research that's on the topic reconstruction of historical event sequence from online news articles related to the Mediterranean Sea conflict. The structure of my presentation would be as follows. First would be the introduction, then the lecture review, after that the research methodology and primary results, and last thing would be the conclusion. As for now, I will start with the introduction. So the domain of my research is the Mediterranean Sea dispute. The Mediterranean Sea is a crucial trade route and it's rich with marine life and natural resources such as oil and gas. Due to that fact, several countries in the region such as Egypt, Israel, Lebanon, Syria, Turkey, Cyprus, Greece and Libya are disputing over overlapping territories, and each country is trying to dominate as much as possible of the Mediterranean. The Mediterranean Sea dispute therefore resulted in two types of threats to the countries in the region. As such, physical security, economic and politics, and cybersecurity, cyber threats. What are the benefits that if one of the countries dominated the Mediterranean region? As an example, if Turkey dominated the Mediterranean Sea, Turkey would be able to control the shipping lanes through the area, so any shipment would pass through Turkey, as well as Turkey would hold a reserve of 1.7 billion barrels of oil and 3.5 trillion cubic meters of natural gas. Here is a snapshot of incidents timeline that took place in the Mediterranean Sea. As an example, in February 2018 is the discovery of Calypso gas field in Cyprus exclusive economic zone by ENI. Few weeks later, Turkish naval forces blocked any drill ship before it can reach its intended drill sites. 2018 January, the Eastern Mediterranean Gas Forum is formed. Months later, specifically at May, Turkey sends exploration and drill ships into Serb's waters, each escorted by Turkish warships. A few weeks later, France signs an agreement with Cyprus to serve French warship at Cyprus Marine Naval Base. So if we look closely at these events, that we could conclude that each event or each incident has an effect. So, for example, the cause of this effect is the discovery of the gas field. So since once Cyprus discovered the Calypso gas field, Turkish naval forces blocked any drill ship. So this is the cause, this is an effect, and each took place during different times. Here is another examples of events that took place on the Mediterranean region. As reported by the Foreign Brief, Greece to decide an expansion of territorial waters. New Europe, Greek hacker took down several websites of the Turkish government. Safety for Sea. Reported that MSC hit by potential cyber attack. So those events are mainly reported by news articles in the form of unstructured data. So if we could have a sequence of events or a timeline of events, we could potentially determine the cause or the reason of the current dispute. As I mentioned in the slide before, most of the events that took place in the Mediterranean Sea are mainly reported by news articles in the form of unstructured data. And as we can see here in the graph, unstructured data is growing exponentially over the years. So the demand on how to extract valuable knowledge from unstructured data has increased tremendously. So what are the challenges in incidents or event sequence reconstruction from unstructured data related to the Mediterranean Sea dispute? It's hard to conduct the process manually, and we must determine the correlation between events before the sequence is constructed. So what are the solutions? First is to identify events-related attributes such as timestamp, location, actors, and descriptions from text, and then automate the information extraction techniques. After that, grouping similar events into clusters. Next, determining the temporal relationship between events. In other words, the correlation between events based on time. Lastly, visualize the extracted events on an evolutionary state graph. The problem statement of my research is as follows. Online news articles are unstructured. Most approaches towards event extraction from unstructured text do not construct events timeline. It's hard to determine the dependency between events from unstructured news articles, and it's hard to have a clear image on the evolution of events through multiple news articles. Therefore, my research aim is to capture the development of historical events that lead to physical and cyber threats to the countries in the Eastern Mediterranean Sea by reassembling incidents, historical events from unstructured data, news articles, reconstructing incidents timeline, extracting all cyber attacks related incidents, determining attack type and attack severity. The research objectives are to collect and pre-process 100 online news articles related to the Eastern Mediterranean Sea conflict, to cluster events according to the crisis that resulted in physical and cyber incidents based on content similarity. In other words, is to group similar events into clusters. The third objective is to generate and visualize event sequence of the Mediterranean Sea dispute based on the time correlation between events or incidents. The last objective is to evaluate and measure the accuracy of events reconstruction. So the scope of this research is as follows. This study or this research will only be using 100 online news articles related to the Mediterranean Sea dispute from the year 2010 to the year 2020 from countries involved in the conflict, including Turkey, Greek, Cyprus, Libya, Egypt, Israel, Lebanon. The study will only be using online news articles reported by legitimate news agencies, including Turkish Official News Agency, Anadolu Agency, National News Agency of Greece, Athens News, Cyprus National News, Artos Chifa, that is an Israeli national news agency, British Broadcasting Corporation, BBC, and Al Jazeera News. The study or the research will be using Python as a programming language, and the research will be using Pratt annotation tool to annotate events-related attributes such as description, location, timestamp, and actors. The significance of the study or the contribution of the study is to assist analysts or the analyst in understanding the historical events extracted from voluminous conflicts and enable countries involved in the Mediterranean Sea disputes to have a broader view on how events are evolving over time. So now, as for this section, I will discuss the literature review of event sequencing from online news articles regarding the Israel-Mediterranean Sea conflict. In this section, first, I will briefly explain information extraction task, and then I will move on to the Mediterranean Sea conflict. Then I will briefly explain text mining and its framework. Finally, this section will compare some existing works on event sequence reconstruction. So first, I will start with information extraction. Information extraction basically aims to extract specific information from document or text based on the user needs. So information extraction consists of various tasks. First, named entity recognition. Named entity recognition is a technique in information extraction which seeks to detect and extract certain types of entities, named entities in text, such as names, locations, organizations, date, time. Using named entity recognition, key information can be easily extracted, which helps in analyzing large amounts of unstructured data. Moving to co-reference resolution. Co-reference resolution is the task of finding all expression in text that refer to the same entity. It's an important step for a lot of higher level natural language processing tasks that involve natural language understanding, such as document summarization, question answering, and information extraction. Moving to event extraction. Event extraction is a technique in information extraction which aims to detect incidents from unstructured text and extract event-related attributes such as who, when, what, and where. Basically, there are two main types of or approaches used to extract events. One is closed domain event extraction, and the other is open domain event extraction. Closed domain event extraction discover and extracts intended events of particular type from text through the use of predefined event scheme, while open domain event extraction doesn't use predefined schemes. It detects events from text and clusters similar events through extracted event features that describe the event. Moving to relation extraction. Relation extraction aims to find the relationship between distinct events. It's an essential process in text mining as it determines the order of events, either event A, for example, occurred after or before event B. There are two main techniques used to extract relation between events. One is temporal relation extraction based on time. The other one is causality relation based on cause and effect. Moving to the background of the Israel-Mediterranean Sea conflict, as I explained earlier in the first section, that the Israel-Mediterranean Sea is an area that is rich in marine life, that contains large amounts of oil and natural gas, and it is one of the world's most crucial trade routes as it connects Africa, Europe, and Asia. Therefore, it's a critical gateway for lots of countries in the region. Because of the overlapping territories, countries in the Mediterranean region are disputing over who has the right to explore the Mediterranean. Countries involved in the disputes are Turkey, Greece, Cyprus, Libya, Egypt, Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, and Israel. However, the Mediterranean dispute resulted in a series of physical and cyber threats to countries in the region. Therefore, having an overview of historical events evolution that took place in the area may help the public to have a better understanding of the causes of the current dispute. Hence, moving to text mining. Text mining is the process of discovering and processing vast amounts of unstructured text. Mining and analyzing text aims to find potentially useful insights in social media posts, emails, blogs, and news articles. Since my research domain is under information extraction and text mining, I will go about briefly text mining framework. Basically, text mining framework composes of two major phases, which are text refining and knowledge filtering. Text refining are techniques used to transform text into intermediate form, while knowledge filtering is to deduce patterns or knowledge from intermediate form. Nevertheless, there exist several stages in text mining. As such, the first stage or step is data preprocessing. Data preprocessing is basically the process of cleaning raw text to transform it into structured format that can be processed by machine learning algorithms. There are several techniques are used in text preprocessing, which are tokenization, removing stopwords, steaming, and lemmatization. Tokenization is the process in which longer text is partitioned into smaller chunks or tokens, while removing stopwords refer to the fact that it removes non-language pronouns, prepositions, and articles, including how or what, etc. Steaming and lemmatization is a technique that transforms word to its spare form. The difference between steaming and lemmatization: steaming is the lemmatization converts a word to a meaningful base form, while steaming just removes the last character in a word. Another stage in text mining is document clustering. Document clustering is an unsupervised learning approach aims to construct groups of similar documents or text. Clustering considered one of the main techniques in text mining used for organizing documents to ease the process of information extraction and information insertion. Text mining based on the idea of finding hidden structure out of unlabeled text documents. However, there are several text clustering or document clustering algorithms, such as probabilistic clustering algorithms, hierarchical and accumulative clustering algorithms, partitional clustering algorithms. Partitional basically consists of three different, or there are several. For now I just listed three. So k-means, bisection k-means, and Box-Short. K-means clustering is a partitioning algorithm that's used commonly in text mining. The idea of k-means basically it partitions documents into k clusters. Cluster will be defined by k centroids, where each centroid is a point representing the center of a cluster. The algorithm operates interactively, where each centroid is initially randomly positioned in the dataset vector space and moves to the middle of the points that are closer to them. The distance between each centroid and the points is recalculated in every new iteration, and the centroids move again to the middle of the closest points. The algorithm is finished when the location or groups no longer change, or when a predefined threshold is not met by the distance at which the centroids change. As for the hierarchical clustering algorithm, construct a group of clusters that can be interpreted as a hierarchy of clusters. Clusters hierarchy can be constructed in two different ways, which are top-down and accumulative bottom-up. hierarchical clustering algorithms use a similarity function to measure the similarity between text documents. However, in the top-down approach, hierarchical clustering algorithms start with one cluster that includes all the documents, and then the cluster will be divided into subclusters recursively. On the other hand, the accumulative approach, every document is regarded as an independent cluster, and the most similar clusters are then merged until all documents are encomposed in a single cluster. Another technique or stage in text mining is text representation. Text representation basically aims or seeks to represent text or document numerically in order to make them mathematically measurable. There are two main types of text representation, which are word embedding and sentence embedding. Word embedding is a learned text representation in which words that have the same meaning have a similar representation. However, there are two main types of word embedding, which are frequency-based and prediction-based. Frequency-based consists of TF-IDF co-occurrence matrix, while prediction-based consists of word two-factor. On the other hand, sentence embedding deals with individual sentences instead of single words. In the case of large text, dealing with individual words is complicated and information extracted would be limited. Sentence embedding techniques represent sentences and their semantic information as vectors. Moving to the application of text mining, one of the major applications of text mining is event sequencing. Event sequence is a collection of ordered sequences of events where each event has a start time and a duration. Having a sequence of related events can reveal trends and relationships between various events that have taken place at a certain time. Let me define what I mean by event. Event is a specific occurrence of something that occurs at a certain time and place, affecting one or more participants, people, organization, and countries, which can also be defined as change of space. So for this research, event is referred to historical events that lead to incidents such as physical and cyber. Text similarities. Text similarities refer to the measure of similarities or distance between two texts or documents. As for this research, several similarities techniques are reviewed, but in my case, I will go for cosine similarity. Cosine similarity is a measure used to determine if two text documents, regardless of their size, are identical. In cosine similarity, text must be transformed into vectors using techniques such as TF-IDF, that stand for term frequency inverse document frequency, which is a text representation. And the similarity is calculated by measuring the cosine angle between two or more vectors. However, moving to the last section of my lecture review, which is visualization. Visualization basically transfer data and information by encoding it as visual objects such as points, graphs, or lines. In this research, data visualization is concerned on representing on the representation of data in an evolutionary graph or timeline. There are few visualization tools available, such as Tableau and K-Lines, and so on. Yeah. Here's a summary of some of the existing work available on event extraction and timeline construction. The first existing work that I have reviewed is is named as Growing Story Forest Line from Massive Breaking News. In this paper, they proposed a two-layer graph-based document clustering to extract fine-grained events from vast long documents and further organizes the events into story trees. They use data from news wires such as Yahoo News, CNN News, and Sina. Another existing work on event extraction and event sequence is building and visualizing long-ranging news stories by Lapan and Hurst. They worked on the issue aggregating and organizing large multi-source data set of news articles into a collection of major events. They adopted the approach that they proposed a method for creating a data set of articles from multiple sources, a topic detection method that handles interpretation topics, a novel way to name events, a method for clustering, rating, and displaying quotations or summary description associated with the events. They use data set from news wires such as CNN, BBC, CBS. But I found out that there is no an assessment of the accuracy of the story creation algorithm. Both the accuracy within the stories, verifying the articles within a given story are related, and across stories, verifying humans will agree with the stories. So they don't have a performance measure method. Another work on the topic tracing event evolution of terror attacks from online news. They worked on the issue terror attacks events related, so they tend to extract terror attacks event related. Approach, they use the temporal relationship, event similarity, temporal proximity, and document distributional proximity to identify the event relationship, the event evolution relationships between events in a terror attack incident. An event evolution graph is used to present the underlying structure of events for efficient browsing and extracting information. Data set used from news wires, news articles, but they don't actually have an event sequence, so there is no construction of event sequence. The last work that I have reviewed is Evolutionary Timeline Summarization, 2011. They work on the issue retrieving news stories of any ongoing incidents. The approach they used modeling topic across different documents and over different time periods to detect how the events evolve. Developing a novel model called evolutionary hierarchical process to capture the topic evolution pattern in timeline summarization. And lastly, constructing an event evolution graph. They used a data set from news articles as well. So to summarize the overall existing work that I have reviewed, most works done by researchers on the domain of event sequence reconstruction. They used clustering techniques to group massive amount of unstructured text into groups of interrelated events. To determine the dependency between events, most works focus on identifying temporal relationship, event similarity, and temporal proximity. As for the visualization of the constructed events sequence, most of the researchers used an event evolution graph. Now we are at the research methodology. In this section, I'm going to go through the overall research plan, along with the justification of each phase in the research methodology, followed by exploring the dataset that's going to be used in this in my research. And finally, the method to measure the performance of the event's reconstruction. So here we are looking at the overall research plan. The table has 4 different columns, which are the research objectives, the corresponding research questions, methodology, and performance measures. The first phase is to collect and pre-process 100 online news articles related to the Eastern Mediterranean Sea conflict. And here we are answering the question how to collect and pre-process all online news articles. Methodology includes 4 different stages, which are developing a crawler to collect articles reporting the Mediterranean Sea conflict, pre-process the collected articles by removing noise, such as removing stopwords, removing word steaming, and removing HTML tags. The third stage is event detection, and last is feature extraction. Performance measures for this phase is to manually check if all collected articles are related to the research case study. As for the second objective, which is phase 2 in my research framework, is to cluster events according to the crisis that resulted in physical and cyber incidents based on content similarity. Basically, is to group similar events into clusters. Here we are answering the questions how to measure the similarity between events and how to cluster interrelated events. Methodology in this phase includes 2 different stages, which are computing the similarity measure between the generated vectors based on cosine similarity, and clustering interrelated event based on the computed cosine similarity between vector matrices using document clustering. As for the performance measures, is to evaluate the accuracy by comparing the clustering results generated by the automatic techniques against the manually created events. The third objective, or the third phase in my research framework, is to construct and visualize the event sequence of the Mediterranean Sea dispute. Here we answer the questions how to determine the event sequence and how to visualize sequence of interrelated events. Methodology includes 2 stages, which are determining the temporal relationship between interrelated events. In other words, is to find the correlation between events based on time. It's basically time correlation. And the second stage is to visualize events using an evolution graph. As for the performance measures, is to evaluate the accuracy by comparing the event sequence or the timeline boundary computed by the system against the boundary of the manually created event sequence. Here we are looking at my last objective, or last phase in my research framework, which is phase 4, that is to evaluate and measure the accuracy of events reconstruction. We are answering the questions how to measure the performance of related events, clustering, and event sequence reconstruction. Methodology is to measurement of accuracy, precision, and recall. So here is a justification of all phases in my research framework, starting first with phase 1, which is data collection and development of data corpus. This phase includes 4 different stages, which are data collection, data preprocessing, event detection, and feature extraction. Data collection, this stage will be done by developing a crawler to collect web articles related to the Mediterranean Sea conflict or my case study. Data preprocessing is to clean the collected articles from any noise using normalization, stopword removal, HTML tag removal, tokenization, and limmatization using the natural language toolkit, Python library or third-party library. The third stage is event detection, which is extracting events from the pre-processed articles manually. Last but not least, feature extraction, which is extracting events features based on term frequency. Basically is to determine the most important words in the article so that they could represent the event, and which will help in clustering similar articles. The second phase of my research framework is development of events clusters. This phase includes two stages or steps, which are similarity measure and document clustering. Similarity measure is basically used to determine if two events are identical. As for this stage, cosine similarity would be used. In cosine similarity, after the documents are transformed into factors, which is done in phase 1, last step, feature extraction. The similarity is obtained by measuring the cosine angle between the vectors. Document clustering, in this step, similar events would be grouped together based on the similarity measure from the previous stage, which is similarity measure. Events that seem similar have similarity measure close to 1, while events that have similarity measure equal to or close to 0 conclude that events are unrelated. The outcome of this stage is clusters of related events. The third phase of my research framework is construction of event sequence and visualization. This phase includes two stages, which are event sequence and visualization. As for event sequence construction, in this phase we are determining the temporal relationship between events. In other words, the correlation between events based on time. So we will use the time correlation to determine the dependency between events. And for the visualization, we will use evolution graph to represent the interrelated events. The last phase, which is phase 4, is evaluation. In here, it includes the computing the performance measure based on the precision and recall. Precision is the probability that two randomly selected events are associated with the same cluster by human annotators, given that they are already identified to be in the same cluster by the automatic system. As for the recall, it is the probability that two randomly selected events are identified to be in the same cluster by the automatic system, given that they are associated with the same cluster by human annotators. Dataset. Here is a sample of the dataset would be used in this research. This research will use news articles from online resources within Turkey, Greek, Egypt, Italy, Libya, Serbs, and any other legitimate news agencies such as BBC, Al Jazeera, that report the Mediterranean Sea conflict from the year 2010 to the year 2020. Data will be collected by developing a crawler. Keywords such as Turkey, Greeks, Mediterranean Sea dispute, Asian dispute will be used to search for the articles. A total of 100 articles will be collected and pre-processed, as articles would be similar to the sample presented here. We will have the news article title, date or timestamp, along with the article description. So now we move on to the primary results. In this section, the initial results obtained will be discussed and demonstrated. So this figure represents the research flowchart, which consists of 4 different phases. The first phase is the data collection and development of data corps. The second phase is development of events clusters. The third phase is construction of event sequence and visualization. Fourth phase is evaluation. So as for now, the initial results obtained are part of Objective 1, which are data collection and pre-processing. So the first stage of Objective 1 is data collection. Data collection is based on the idea that we extract online news articles through the use of crawler So we will put a crawler using Python and third parties libraries such as request and beautiful soup. So the abstract idea of the crawler is we send an HTTP request to the news agency that we want to extract the article from. Once we get the HTML response, we will parse the HTML using beautiful soup and extract the information based on a predefined functions in beautiful soup library. So the figure here shows an abstraction of the crawler that I have built. As I have mentioned before, the search is using online news articles related to the Mediterranean Sea conflict as dataset. At this stage, the abstraction of the crawler is used to collect the data is built as shown in the figure here. So there are a number of requirements needed for the crawler to work, which are a list of legitimate news articles agencies such as Turkish Daily News, BBC, and a list of keywords which would be used to search for related articles such as Mediterranean Sea conflict, Turkey, Greece, the Med crisis, etc. And several Python models or third parties libraries such as request and beautiful soup. So first of all, we start with importing Python models that are request and beautiful soup, and then a list of keywords are initialized as shown here. After that, the news agency domain names would be initialized as well. Then a request is made to the domain names we have in the list. And once we get the response is passed using the beautiful soup parser and is stored in a variable. Each news agency has a unique way in its representing the news articles. As for news agency used in this implementation, the news article arranged as a grid and the news pages links put between A tags. So using loop to look for all anchor tags we find in the page, and we search for specific keywords. If we find these keywords, that means it's an related articles. So we store the links into another variable called article links. Once we extract all the news article links, we will initiate another request and parse the HTML response and store the articles into a text file. So here are a few samples of the article collected using the crawler that I built. So I have collected nearly 8 or 9 articles for now, and all articles are related, and each article is stored in a separate text file as shown in this figure here. Data preprocessing is the second stage of objective 1. So once we collect the articles, we need to go through several pre-processing stages in order to clean the articles. So the first stage would be tokenization, which representing the document into separate words. After tokenization, we could implement several other steps such as removing subwords, steaming, and lemmatization. And we will see each one in the next slide. The first technique that I have implemented is removing subwords. In this stage, articles were represented as tokens, and each single token was checked. If the token contains a word, the word would be written in a file. Otherwise, if the token is not, if a stop word, then the token is ignored. An example of stopwords would be to the and so on. These stopwords used to connect sentences. The second technique was implemented is removing noise. In this step, special characters were removed from articles. As you can see here in this article, include noises such as commas, stop, full stops, double quotation, parentheses, and so on. And in this article, all noise were removed. The third step implemented was normalization. Basically, in this technique, all words in the article are transformed into lowercase, as is illustrated here. Any capital case letter would be transformed to lowercase letter. Last technique was applied is words lemmatization, which basically in this technique words were transformed to their base form, meaning a word such as talks with s at the end will be transformed to talk without s, as illustrated in this figure. In this article, word talks has an s in the end, and here talk was transformed to its base form. Another example would be NATOs. NATOs includes, it's not in its base form, but in the second article, NATO was transformed to its base form. The figure here illustrates the implementation of the data preprocessing stage. So techniques were applied such as removing stopwords, removing noise, lemmatization, and normalization. The abstract idea of the data preprocessing implementation is that articles are stored in a text file. Each article is stored in a separate text file, and we import each file, and then we use predefined functions through the use of the NLTK, Natural Language Processing Kit library or model. We use the predefined functions to do the cleaning job. To sum up, in this presentation, I have went through the research domain as well as the problem background, the challenges and the solutions, as well as the objectives, scope, research aim, and the significance of the study. And then I moved on to the literature review that I have reviewed. I went briefly on the framework of information extraction and text mining, and reviewing some of the existing work on event sequence and event extraction. And then I have discussed my research methodology, the overall research plan, and the research framework. And lastly, I have proposed, or I have demonstrated the initial results that I have obtained in PSM1. Thank you for listening. I hope that you have enjoyed the presentation.